Support for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
Tumblr,
ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com,
and Gmail.
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com.
And from listeners like you. Thank you.
And my free time.
Got to get that in there. Well, through sickness and in health, in wealth and prosperity, in good times and in bad times, this union still is continuing. Yes, that's right. Elwood City Limits is back again.
That's right. We never left. It's almost like a marriage, in that we're gonna just keep doing this forever and ever. There'll be weeks off, but we've made a blood pact, a blood oath.
Forever and ever, and forever and ever. Well, there's no wood in knocking distance. So hey, you at home, knock on some wood for me. My name's Will Young. Thank you for joining us for the Episodic Arthur podcast. I was the one who was sick last week, so I had to call in at the 11th hour and let Lucas know. By the way, that being Lucas Mancini, my
hello, very
courteous guest host. Sorry that I was a little bit too under the weather to join you last week.
Oh, that's fine. I had to set up signs in the rain today. It's a long story, and I was like freaking out that I was going to get a cold, but I'm feeling pretty good. So luckily I've dodged that bullet, and I'm trying to stave off that early fall sickness myself. Got to keep up on my vitamin C, maybe get some orange juice when I go grocery shopping today.
I was actually just saying to my fiance, she had a little bit of a bout of something like a little bit of a virus last week, and not to jinx anything, because of course I've been sick plenty of times in my life, but I have a pretty decent immune system. I'm also a big strapping lad, so that probably helps to evade a lot of minor sicknesses.
You know what they say, the more you can bench, the less you get sick. That's just science.
Well, big strapping lad, not in the sense of that I'm strong or of any use in that department. I'm fat. It's a polite way of saying that I'm fat. It's okay.
You've left me speechless.
For once, my goodness, all I had to do was describe my gut to you. Okay, well, we're not going to be speechless anymore, because we've got ourselves an episode of Arthur to talk about. In fact, it was the one we were going to talk about last week. In fact, these notes have been open for a whole week here, so let's not waste any time. No emails to get through today, so let's go and do it. Lucas, first episode we're talking about is Francine Redecorates.
And we get a really fun opening to start this episode off. It's Francine filling in the Arthur talking to the camera role. But we get these... This reminded me of... and I think we've brought this up on the podcast before, but the YTV public service announcement, the What's Your Thing? I know we've talked about this before. I mean, it's kind of a Canadian touchstone. If our American listeners haven't seen it by now from hearing us talk about it, I recommend you look it up on YouTube. But it's the same exact concept. Francine says everyone has their own tastes, which I agree with. It's very true. And I really like this intro because it's basically some quick cuts of everybody basically saying what their thing is. So we get Muffy's into typical girly stuff. She loves fashion. DW singing the Crazy Bus song in like a really over-the-top way where she like barely knows the lyrics, but she's like selling. It's like a very karaoke-esque performance because she barely knows the lyrics, but she's really selling the performance.
Yeah, you're right. So I had a first question here. Is this the first time that Francine has ever done the cold open herself? I want to say yes.
If not, it's very sparingly that she has, because it feels special that it's someone other tthan Arthur doing it.
Yeah, you're right. DW's kind of bebopping and scatting the Crazy Bus lyrics. It's just like, scabby, hoopy, gubba, goopy, yeah, glabby, geebly, goopy, goopy. I'm like, okay, well, you know what?
You're like, is that Crazy Bus, or is it a future song?
Muffy talking about, she likes dresses in pink or lavender, no orange ever, which is the final the last straw for me. If you don't like orange, well, I don't know what we have to talk about. Orange is my favorite color.
And I think orange has come back since the 90s. Like, I think orange is pretty in right now. So,
Well,
jokes on you, Muffy.
Well, you would know. You seem to have a little bit more of a fashion eye than I do.
The real fashion is just putting on whatever you like, whatever makes you feel confident.
That's right, kids.
Hey, just like this episode says, everybody's got their own taste.
Sue Ellen is talking about a notebook. A notebook is useless unless you personalize it. And we get a great one, so we are going kind of back and forth in the style of that Canadian commercial we were talking about. And, of course, the best joke of it goes to Binky, who does, like, 3 different cutaways. And he's, like, really trying to think what he's going to say. And in the question of what is your favorite thing, Binky says macaroni and cheese.
But he's like, what's great about it is that, like, we get the first one, he's like, and then some more people's things, and we cut back to Binky, and he's like, like, you can see the wheels turning, and then by the third time we cut back to Binky, he's like, I got it. Macaroni? And the camera zooms in, and he goes, and cheese. Like, it's this big revelatory character trait about Binky.
I really can't blame him. A good mac and cheese. My fiance makes an awesome mac and cheese because she bakes the cheese on top of it. And now that her stomach's better, actually, I might be getting that this week. So fingers crossed, boys and girls, and everybody in between. We've got ourselves an episode here. It starts off with Arthur and his dad preparing a yard sale. This was funny. So, you know, his dad is a big believer in one person's trash is another person's treasure. Arthur's kind of fishing through a box, and he pulls out what looks to be a mug of, like, a clown holding a fish. And he makes a great noise. Just goes,
yeah, he's like disgusted by this. I love, like, this seems to be like a common trope is like fish tchotchkes. Like one that 90s shows always made fun of is like the singing fish on the wall, like that thing.
Right.
But I really haven't seen that many of those in real life, and I'm always excited. When I was a kid, I was always excited when I saw one in real life because I'm like, oh, it's that fish thing that people have on TV. So I just like it when shows make fun of like ugly fish tchotchkes.
One of my favorite genres of YouTube video is when you get one of those fish statues and it doesn't work properly, so it just sounds like a demon.
Oh, jeez.
Those are so funny because usually the people who are videotaping it are like laughing that kind of laugh that's just like ha 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 ha, like they're kind of scared but kind of amused, and they sound truly horrifying. And we actually get another fish thing here. So DW is offering up Arthur's toys from quote unquote storage to give away to people. And it's just stuff that he already plays with. And then one of the things that she offers to Francine, who comes to check out the yard sale, is a what looks to be maybe a Game Boy or like a Tiger Electronics handheld game. And
I got more of a Tiger Electronics vibe because it was like standalone, or like if you want to get old school, like Game & Watch.
Yes, exactly. And it's called Fish Finder 6, and it's advertised as having improved graphics.
They really lost the path after Fish Finder 4.
Did you have any Tiger Electronics games when you were a kid?
Oh, I must have. Like me getting a GameCube, I think that's all my parents would let me have. I can't remember the specifics of one. I feel like there was one that was kind of like Mock Rider. And I feel like I've played some of the Game & Watch games somewhere. I don't know if I played just like an emulated version of them, but I have memories of like playing the Game & Watch game where I don't know if they must have been reissued with like a Happy Meal or something, because I remember playing the Game & Watch game where it's like the squid and you have to like get the treasure up from the squid and like you go down and then you avoid his tentacles.
Yeah.
That's one of the more famous Game & Watch games. It makes an appearance in like Smash Brothers Brawl, but I don't know where I would have played that because Game & Watches are like really old.
I've never touched a Game & Watch myself. I had the Tiger Electronics I can remember having I had one with Aladdin. I think I had a Lion King one, and I had a Star Wars one.
Ooh, you got the licensed ones.
Yeah, they were fun before I had real video games. Francine's kind of looking around for just Well, as we find out later, she's got a very unique taste, and she finds something that is to her liking, which is Mom and Dad's favorite never-used wedding present, which turns out to be an ottoman with a built-in foot warmer and TV dinner tray. It's something.
It's got the look of something that would break, like, after 4 uses. I feel like that type of, like, furniture you plug into a wall, unless you're getting, like, a really high-end heated couch, they always break really easily for some reason, just in my experience.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, where you have a thing that's meant to be several things, it's not going to do any one of those exceptionally well because you're essentially spreading it too thin. I mean, the ottoman part seems fine, but then, like, the foot warmer doesn't look, it's got, like, a foot imprint, so it probably only, it's, like, you have to be that size or smaller. And then the TV dinner tray, that would be such a pain to clean. Because you would have to, like, really dig out everything, every part of the TV dinner, or else your ottoman would smell like used food. Ugh. It's gross even to think about. So Francine is incredibly excited, brings it back home, and we kind of start the clash here between her and her sister Catherine. By the way, Catherine reading a looks like a leather-bound version of Wuthering Heights, just like a teenager.
And I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but, like, the portrayal of Catherine as a 90s teenager is so on point. From her, she's got a very particular way of speaking that the, like, writers always make fun of, like, teens in the 90s, how she's like, it's so da-da-da. Like, she has this very sing-songy way of speaking that's, like, it seems very deliberate. Like, it doesn't seem like it's a voice of a choice of the voice actress. It seems like something that would have required, like, some direction, like, say it like this. And she talks like that all the time. The way her character is dressed, like, all the kids in Arthur are dressed very formally. Like, they all wear sweaters and collared shirts. Mm-hmm. Where Catherine's got, like, the cut off jacket, and the like Converse and the leg warmers. Like, I don't know. I think, like, and the way, like, her hair, even, like, her bangs with the ponytail, like, Catherine seems like a very accurate portrayal of a teenager in the mid 90s to me.
I think, and the clothing difference, I would guess, is being, like, Catherine is finally able to, like, buy her own clothes versus, like, Francine and Arthur and everybody who have their clothes bought for them.
Which is, it's just a great detail for them to have thought of, right? Because that's how it would be. But a lot of shows, like, everybody, kids, adults, doesn't matter what your age is, y'all dress the same just because that's how the characters were designed.
Catherine kind of reminds me a little bit of Julia Stiles' character in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Oh, interesting. You know, this is going to be pretty embarrassing, but I actually haven't seen that movie. I know it's supposed to be very, very good, but it's a big blank spot on my Heath Ledger to watch list.
As far as 90s teen movies go, I think it's really at the upper echelon. It's very good. I really enjoy watching it.
I'm a Clueless man myself.
Oh yeah, Clueless.
That's a top 10 movie for me. I actually adore Clueless.
Clueless is a great movie. My fiance introduced it to me, and I was, like, really skeptical. But then I saw it through the whole thing. I'm like, that was delightful. I really enjoyed
it's like it's very engaging. I love that movie. Anyway,
then I finally had context for the Iggy Azalea video.
The less said about Iggy Azalea in general, the better.
So Catherine is taking exception to this ottoman being moved into her room. It's Francine and Catherine's shared room because Francine has brought in a bunch of other knickknacks that have really no theme and are really tacky, but Francine thinks they're cool. Like, well, actually, the first one she mentions is pretty cool. She has, like, a light up ice cream lamp. It's like a lamp in the shape of an ice cream cone. She has an alarm clock that is in the shape of an erupting volcano, and she also just has a statue of like a Komodo dragon, just like a standing statue of a reptile.
It's almost Godzilla-esque the way it's standing on its, like, hind legs, like old Godzilla, like not the recent designs, but like classic 1950s.
And Francine also is not a fan of Catherine's design, which is very lace driven. And Catherine defends herself by saying it has a unified theme. Francine comes back with nauseating. That's the theme. And and speaking with Catherine has a very distinct way of talking. She comes back with, "You are so ignorant," which is
I wrote that down too. That's a great line.
which is definitely like a teenager, hey, just discovered what ignorant means. I'm going to use it in like every sentence kind of thing. I loved it. So
this whole exchange I find really realistic. Like, as someone who's lived with roommates, and my girlfriend, for instance, is very particular about like, she's really passionate about the way we decorate the apartment, and we're all very excited about this new IKEA that opened up in our town. You could see a great BuzzFeed article about how much of a stir that's caused. But I've been there quite a few times since it's opened. But I could totally like empathize with both Francine and her sister about when you have to live with someone else who doesn't quite share your decorating tastes. It can be frustrating when they just sort of like, because it's your space, but it's not your space because it's a shared space. And so when someone intrudes upon that and like, I don't know, buys a table that's ugly, you're like, oh, this is like in my space, this ugly table I don't like. So it's a very realistic and almost grown-up problem. Like, unless you had siblings and kind of lived in a shared living space like Francine and her sister do because they're in an apartment, you wouldn't really experience this problem until adulthood.
I actually think that an IKEA visit is in the future of myself and my fiance. She's been very excited to see it as well. So I'm sure she'll come home with something.
Been there 5 times.
5 times?
I have been there 5 times. We were there opening day.
What did you buy? Did you buy that guy's second place in line for $1,000 or whatever it was?
No. It's funny, all those stories about the like 4,000 people standing in line or whatever. They scared everybody off by the time we got there opening day because we went in after work, and so like that was actually the least busy day we've been of the 5 times. On the weekends, it was crazy.
Awesome. I'll have to keep that in mind. And yeah, you're right. I've kind of run into this a little bit. We're less fussy when it comes to decorating, but like one thing I had to not get rid of, but I had to really downsize was, when I lived on my own, I had a bunch of posters, and a lot of them are wrestling posters, but posters all the same. And then moving in here, it's like, okay, it's either got to be in a frame or it's not going up because we're not putting up posters. So I had to kind of say goodbye to that segment of my life.
I'm forever thankful to my girlfriend for allowing me to keep my framed Giant Bomb poster signed by 5 of the Giant Bomb staff. It is framed, but it hangs prominently in our living room, and it makes me very happy. Excellent.
I'd love to see that sometime. And it's framed, so it's tasteful.
It's framed and signed. It's a pretty big deal.
That's going to be worth something someday. Francine shows the ottoman to her mother. Catherine again has a great line of, I might as well put a sign up on our door, toxic taste dump. And
it's a double entendre because her dad works at the waste dump.
Oh yeah, she would know a thing or two about dumps. So she sorry, I made myself laugh for the exact reason that you're thinking. Catherine and Francine's mother says that the room's due for a new paint job, and they come out with like their preferred color palettes. So Francine's is red and purple, whereas Catherine's much more, if you'll allow me to stereotype just slightly, much more teenage girl of mauve and gray.
Did your parents ever let you pick the color of your room?
No.
Because my room was painted like twice when I was a little kid, and my parents never let me pick the color. When I was a kid, I always wanted, because my cousin had it, because his parents let him pick the color, I wanted a green screen green. Like, that was my dream room color, but my parents never let me do it.
No, I didn't get to pick mine either. It was always just about like, well, this one is kind of the least offensive to look at, and kind of keeping the house's value in mind. So, but it was never anything, objectionable. It was always kind of, yellowish, or as Francine's mother says, white. That way,
tan or very light blue for me.
So they decide to kind of get some ideas about what they should have the design of their room be. Francine goes to different female friends of hers and kind of tries to get some ideas of a theme she could do. She goes to Muffy's, and she's immediately kind of intimidated by all the stuff that she has. And it's kind of a cutaway to Francine in this like giant, almost looks like a warehouse with just like girders and stuff, and just surrounded with all this crap essentially. And she just yells into the echoing maw, "Where's my bed?" And so she...
It's like Muffy lives in the warehouse from the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's right. Francine's like, "Hey, where'd you put the Crazy Bus CD?" And Muffy's like, "Oh, it's being looked after by top men." Who? Top men.
That's funny.
Francine goes to Sue Ellen, who is she's kind of like showing stuff that she got from all around the world, and Francine's mind immediately goes to like her essentially living in like a jungle, like she's swinging from vine to vine, and looks, and her bed's like made out of rock or something, and she just slips and falls off a vine and like does a flat back bump, and it looks pretty painful. And Francine dismisses it and says, "The exotic look really isn't me."
All it's missing is that, oh no, is it Phil Collins? Who did the song from Tarzan?
Phil Collins.
Is it Phil Collins? Yes, I got it right on the first try.
Not bad. And finally, she goes to see Fern, who I'm very happy to see is becoming more of a regular character. And Fern,
also becoming more of a goth, apparently.
I know, this was great. So it's like Fern is, she kind of goes to Fern's room. It's a little plain, and she says, "This isn't my style." And Fern says, "Not mine either. It's my mom's style." And she opens up this book and she says, "Now this is my style." And it's a literal vampire's crypt. Like, I was just watching Fright Night the other day. This is what Jerry the vampire would live in. It's hilarious. It's like Fern is a low-key goth. It's kind of awesome. Catherine and Francine present their design ideas at a family meeting. Did you ever have like regular family meetings?
Not this formal. It was pretty informal family meetings where we just kind of talk to each other. It was never like, "All right, gather around."
Yeah, like taking minutes and stuff. So Francine, they both kind of drew them up on paper. I like how on Francine's design, it's just like it's like a basketball hoop. It's a bed. It's very bat themed, as I recall. And she also has like a lamp covered with like spider webs. So it's a little spooky in time here for Halloween in a couple of weeks. And Catherine doesn't like it. She's like, "Where's my bed?" Which they both kind of end up asking of each other's. And Francine points to this tiny little square on the outside of the room and says, "Right here." So that was funny that she's just kind of shunted to the outside. Catherine's idea is quite much more lavish. It's kind of got like a grandfather clock. It's also a
grandfather clock that doubles as a bed.
Yes.
That's what she expects Francine to sleep in.
Nice detail here of how like Francine's is very basically drawn and Catherine's is a lot more ornate. And I think that was a good idea to like make their drawing styles both distinct. Like it's a little detail, but I appreciate the commitment to it. So yeah, it's exactly. She says, "Where's my bed?" She points to the grandfather clock, says, "This converts to a cot." And Francine just says, "I can't sleep in a clock." Which
is actually pretty reasonable. Like, I don't think it'd be difficult to. Well,
I don't think it would fold up. I think it would fold out. It's not like she has to go inside the clock every night.
But still, like, how comfortable could that cot be? If it's a working grandfather clock as well.
That's a very good point. So they are kind of at odds at this point. Francine also says that I don't want to be sharing my room with some crazy frillanoid, which is a
hilarious like turn of phrase. Frillanoid.
It's very 90s.
You got to avoid the frillanoid.
And eventually Francine says I might as well, or no, Catherine says I'd move in a second, and Francine says I'm fine, I'll move, and then Catherine says no, I said it first, I'm moving. And they decide to give her essentially what Catherine calls a loft style room in the living room. So it's essentially
she says I love it. It's like living in a loft, which I thought was a great touch because, like, once again, it's a very teenager thing to, like, romanticize having, like, a bachelor apartment or like a loft-style living situation. Like, I think it's it's very intrinsic to that stage of your life about fantasizing about, oh, when I'm out on my own, I'll have an apartment in the big city and it'll be like a loft and like it's so modern, like very realistic for the time. In an era where like Friends is on TV and that's like the standard of which everybody judges themselves against. This is like very realistic.
Yes, and to those of us who are older, it's like saying, I love it. It's like having a studio apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
And really, it's not that great because it's just the living room separated by a curtain, basically. And it doesn't even seem that appealing to like I wouldn't want this room. It seems like a real sacrifice of privacy. And I'm surprised that a teenager would go for that.
My sister's not my sister, my girlfriend's older sister had a similar arrangement at one of their places, just because they didn't have a separate room, so they kind of built like one of those, those wooden things in like TV studios, those like wooden almost like accordion walls that like fold up. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
that people
yeah.
change behind.
Those
so
dividers.
they had basically two of those set up, and that was what cut off her room from like everything else in the area.
I see. Yeah, it's just like, even when I was a teenager, I'm like, no, I really need a door here. Like, let's make that very clear. It may appeal to some, but it definitely wouldn't have appealed to me. And Francine gets to discover the joys of basically what having her first apartment. Like, she goes back to her room and like does the whole hello, and it echoes, and it just reminded me of when I moved into my first apartment before I had anything, and I'm like, it's so empty. She also does a great burn on Catherine before that scene ends. She's like, Catherine starts like puts a mat down on the table and just like talks about her unified theme, and then Francine's like, see, she's like a disease from a space meteorite. She spreads everywhere. And then
she compares her sister to Venom, essentially.
Yeah, does the zombie walk out of the room of lace? I need lace. So at this point, Francine's trying to find more stuff for her room just to fill it up so it's a little less empty. And the perks of having a dad who works at the dump, you can go dumpster diving anytime you want.
Yeah, this show really romanticizes like finding cool stuff at the dump. Like, I feel like we've seen that happen over 3 times in Arthur thus far, and it just doesn't seem that realistic. I don't know. Maybe people threw stuff out differently in the 90s, but I don't think I ever met anyone who have found anything useful at the dump besides a new door from a Mazda 3 that was found at a dump.
Ooh. And lest we forget, of course, DW wishing that she had her own bedroom. It's like Arthur and Francine
Oh my gosh. This might be my favorite part of either of these episodes. This was amazing.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to forget about it. DW is watching Arthur and Francine play basketball, and of course, DW still has to share her room with Kate. But in her imagination, she gets to move into the garage, which is great because everybody operates under DW logic in her imagination. So it's like her parents are moving the bed into the garage, and Mom says, turning the garage to your bedroom was an excellent idea, DW. And Dad just says, now Kate won't bother you.
Like, yeah, everybody, it's like a universe that's bent to DW's whims. So we get a shot of like the inside of DW's like idealized room. Walter the deer is there, which is a great callback. Mary Moo Cow's in there. There's a couple, like, there's some great continuity with this sequence, and then it also shows that DW's got like a video doorbell. Like, Arthur rings in and he pops on the video screen, and DW's like, what do you want? And like you said, it's the DW verse, so Arthur of course is just like a fiend for cake. That's all he wants. He's like, DW, do you have any cake?
And then DW, the great and powerful, she's like, she appears to people as a head in a cloud, and she just goes, no, now go away. And then
it's like she's in the Wizard of Oz, or if she's rhymes with Wizard of Oz, if she's Zardoz. Either way, giant floating head.
The gun is good. and then she trap doors Arthur. There's a trap door in the garage, and he just gets sent to the center of the earth, I'm to assume.
There's also like Buckingham Palace guards like guarding the outside of the garage.
Yeah, my fiance was wondering about that. She thought they were Mounties for a second, which would have been even funnier. But no, she's got the Buckingham Palace guards, like you said. And yeah, it is a fun it is a fun little aside there. So Francine searching for stuff at the dump, and she seems to not be able to find anything that's me. But then she does. She was her previous design for her room included a lot of bats, and she manages to find what she calls a Batmobile, which is essentially like one of those things that you put above a baby's crib, except it's like all bats.
A baby mobile, but with bats. I wonder if they they just decided to have it be a Batmobile because they wanted to make that reference.
And of course, I remember as a kid, I was like, "That's not a Batmobile. It's not even a car." I didn't know. See, it flew a little bit over my head. So Francine puts the Batmobile in her room as Catherine is still seeming to enjoy her time in the living room. And then the breaking point for Francine having her own room is that night she goes to sleep and has a dream that her mobile comes to life. And so the bats kind of come off of the rigging and they start kind of doing shapes in the air. And she's impressed by them at first, but then they all kind of morph together into some sort of weird evolution. It becomes a real bat with a rather suggestive face, I might add. And it keeps kind of swooping towards her. And also it has like a Transylvanian accent. And it may be because...
Yeah, it's a very Boris Karloff impression.
It kind of reminded me of Michael Morbius from the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
Ooh, I'm not familiar.
It was just like, I'm so glad you don't share a room, Francine. And I just was waiting for her to talk about it, I hungered for plasma, or something like that. So
as much as DW's imagination sequence was true to her character, I feel like this imagination sequence just kind of seems a little bit out of character for Francine. I don't think it's kind of weird that they all morph into one bat, and I guess it's kind of scary in the context of it's a nightmare. But I don't think Francine would be that freaked out by this.
No,
but she ends up being pretty spooked just in time for Halloween.
Exactly, and I wrote that in my notes too. The next day, Catherine and Francine find each other, and they found things for one another to help spice up their rooms. Francine, Catherine has got for her the clown mug with the fish, which Francine declares as super. So that's definitely in line with her taste. And she gives Catherine an old tea set that she found at the dump, which hopefully she washed before she gave it to her. Catherine kind of looks at her room, and Francine says, maybe you can put it in your room. Your real room? So kind of a little bit on a dime, Francine is, offering Catherine her room back. And Catherine's also expressing that her room isn't all that great either, which we got to see even less of. So we kind of just have to go along with it. And then as soon as their parents come back, they've decided to recombine their rooms into one. And they're all of a sudden fine with each other's decorative taste, which
Well, Francine Francine we get a little bit more motivation for, because it's not just the nightmare. She was uncomfortable when she felt her room was a little empty, when she's sort of Animal Crossing happy home designer arranging all of her furniture around and she can't get it quite right because it's so empty. Mm-hmm. And then someone offers that maybe she needs more stuff, that's why she goes to the dump. So she was already kind of uncomfortable at that point, so she does have motivation for wanting to have Catherine back. Catherine, though, is a little bit more on the dime.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. We have seen Francine's viewpoint throughout this whole thing, and it seems like, well, we arrived at this. I don't see why this was so difficult from the beginning, but I guess they all they had to have their turning point at some point. It just, I don't know. Seems like a bit of a path to get to this result. Anyway, so then Francine has a couple of her friends over, Muffy, Sue Ellen, and Fern. And they're marveling at all the stuff that Catherine has, just in awe of this, all the possessions of a teenager. Fern says she wishes she had an older sister too. And then from outside, Catherine just yells at them, "Feet off the furniture!" And they all just kind of instinctively take their feet off of the bed or the ottoman or whatever they're sitting on. And that's
typical Americans wearing their shoes inside the house.
Yeah, really, that's unthinkable when I was a kid. And that's the end of that story. And now, a word from a kid.
And now, a word from a kid.
This is very loosely related to the episode in that it deals with furniture, and a girl who I didn't quite get the name of, but she's extremely talented. at basically doing custom paint jobs of different furniture. She paints like a sun on one, she paints like a moon on her desk, and it's very detailed and well done. Not much to say about this besides there's something soothing about watching people paint, specifically mix paints together and stuff. There's a Bob Ross quality to the way it's always magical when someone's really good at painting and you watch the paint like a Bob Ross, because they make it look so effortless, but it's like, oh, there's just like a blob, and then 3 strokes later it's like, oh my goodness, look at this skyscape. So I got a kick out of it for that. And it was also nice to see them focus on one subject for A Word From Us Kids rather than just a classroom. But it is really loosely tangentially related to the episode.
Yeah, really breaking formula with this one. They even had to do a new recording of And Now a Word From a Kid. Yeah, no, I think it's cool. It's always interesting to watch someone do something they're very good at. Like you said, whether it's Bob Ross or whether it's this girl who they actually didn't name. I was actually going to say over under on this girl being a daughter of someone on the crew.
I was good at, you took the words out of my mouth. I was like, this is totally a production person's kid. They're like, my niece is really good at painting furniture.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it is cool, and I can kind of see, if you squint at it, you can see how it fits into the episode of like, oh, it's about, painting like your own sense of design and all that kind of thing. So, it's fine, and it's it's fine basically.
And now, back to Arthur.
All right, let's get into the second half of this episode. Second story, Arthur the Loser.
NBA season is starting again very, very soon. I'm like knee deep in preseason coverage. I've been reading a lot of articles on The Ringer. I listened to Bill Simmons's like NBA like preseason podcast about over-unders of all the teams in the Eastern and West Conference. Like, I'm knee deep into it right now. So it's another case of like my thoughts being projected into the universe and Arthur grabbing onto those. Imagine my excitement when this episode starts with a rip-roaring b-ball game.
Yeah, like you said, you really liked the DW as the Wizard of Oz imagination sequence. This one, I've been thinking about this cold open for like years now. Every once in a while I just remember it. I will say, before we get into that exactly, check Elwood City Limits' social media. I posted a YouTube link to a like behind the scenes video of how an Arthur episode gets made in 2017. It's very interesting, and I got quite a laugh out of the fact that the voice actor for DW, the little boy who voices DW now in season 20, he says, like, when I'm not doing the show, I love to play basketball because, ball is life. And I immediately thought of our boy Lucas. So,
a man after my own heart. So Arthur is ripping up the court. He's like a little Allen Iverson. Like, he's a lot shorter than the other players, but he is crossing people up. He's out there breaking some ankles, and he's shooting from way downtown. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Like, he's doing some stuff you only see on Slam Ball. Like, he goes up to the rim for the dunk, and he's like, Arthur's 5 feet or below, and he's getting like these huge jumps. You'd have to get there on a trampoline.
He's got some of Michael's secret stuff.
Yeah, wants to be like Mike. And you can clearly tell this is a fantasy. I mean, obviously from the way it's presented, but the way that people talk is very much in like their trailer voices. Brain's like, we need one more basket to win, and Arthur's like, if Francine gives me the ball, I'll take care of it. There's even a cutaway when Arthur goes for the dunk, and it's Francine just going, "Go, Arthur!" This is like, awesome. Oh, geez, I wonder whose fantasy this could be. But yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome, and then they do essentially the same thing. So in the real world and in imagination, it's the same sort of scenario of like they're down 2 points, and Arthur does a bit of a breakaway. And, in his imagination, he succeeds wildly. And Mr. Ratburn says, Arthur's team is the winner. But then he tries to do it in the real world. It's not nearly as exciting or impressive. Arthur misses a 2-pointer. And then Mr. Ratburn blows the whistle and just says, Binky's team wins.
I love the delivery on Binky's team wins. Like, that was the perfect like cherry on top of the whole situation.
It's so ordinary. It's so deadpan that it's a great contrast to everything that we saw at the beginning there. And it's even down to the language of like, so in the imagination, Brain says, we need one more basket to win. In real life, he says, if we don't score this basket, we lose. Like it's much more of a negative tinge, or
Glass
maybe
half full, half empty situation.
exactly. And Arthur can't even muster the trailer voice in real life. He just goes, "I'll take care of it." Not "I'll take care of it." I love the attention to detail in this opening, and it essentially, I think the message is something along the lines of like being the best or winning at something isn't as easy as you think. It's a little loose tie into what the episode's all about, but I really like the presentation of it. So we do get into the episode. Another new title card with the Reed family taking a picture. I'll add there. So it comes with a fake commercial for
which is a very accurate fake commercial. Like this commercial is cut and voiced exactly like many a board game commercial in the 90s. I got flashbacks to what's the one where the stuff pops out of the guy's stomach?
Operation.
No, not Operation. It's the there's like a guy, like an Ace Ventura type looking dude, and then like CGI shapes like pop out of his stomach. It's like
Perfection.
It's one word.
Perfection.
Pop goes perfection. Wow. But all those like YTV like sorry and like trouble, like we love getting in trouble, like this is a very true to life representation of board game advertising. The most fun you'll ever have. And much like real life, Arthur, like the first line Arthur says after the ad ends is, "I want that game."
Yeah, no, you're right. It is. It's funny how when you think about it, board game advertising to kids was ubiquitous back in the 90s. Like there were so many, and you already listed a bunch of them. You know, there were other ones for like Grape Escape and Mousetrap and Free.
Mousetrap, it's a zany action, the crazy contraption, the fun is catching.
It's Mousetrap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Or like, Grape Escape or Fraidy Cats or any of those other ones. So it was everywhere, and I forgot about that. And
how could I forget Mr. Bucket, the illustrious
or
Mr. Bucket,
or the one with the crocodile teeth.
Oh, jeez, that thing was deadly. I'm surprised they allowed kids to have that thing.
That's like
so scary.
That's like a Five Nights at Freddy's thing waiting to happen.
Or it's like the kid version of Russian roulette when you think about it.
Yeah, I guess it kind of was. I don't think I ever really played. I think I was too scared. I thought it might.
It hurts when it hits you. Like if it bites your finger, it kind of hurts. I don't know. It's messed up. Not a good wholesome game like Mr. Bucket. You put the balls in his mouth. Well,
yeah. We got the game. The game is called No Guessing, and you're right. It is very true to how those commercials used to be, and I must commend them for that. Arthur is very adamant about the fact that he wants that game. He's outside like the toy store with his friends pointing at it, and it's just like they say it's the most fun you'll ever have. And Francine is obviously just being like, more fun than the last day of school, more fun than Christmas morning. And then Arthur's just like, I want that game.
Hashtag I want that game.
Hashtag I want that game. We get a little thing of Arthur trying to get the money out of his bionic bunny piggy bank, and he's like making the real like tongue out concentrating face, and DW is watching him and just says, does making those faces scare the money into coming out?
Great line.
And then finally Arthur manages to scare up the X amount of dollars he needs to buy, No Guessing. I did like when he buys it at the toy store, you could see the clerk behind the counter like literally counting his money at the counter, which seems like a little unprofesh. Like he's
as someone who back in the day would give the person at EB Games a Ziploc bag filled with loose bills and change, I've seen someone count the money on the counter before.
Oh yeah, okay. It just seemed like something that maybe upper management would frown upon, unless this guy owns the place, in which case he can do whatever he wants. So Arthur's very, very excited to play No Guessing, which is essentially, it plays out. The board looks it's basically Trivial Pursuit with a bit of a bent towards kids, and there's a big button in the center with a star, and when you land on it, it makes like a boring noise, and everybody.
Ooh, you gotta put the sound effect in here, because it's like it's one of those things where Arthur episodes, like the audio of them sticks with you all these years. Like the very, very unique. It's like almost a like it's such a unique sound, and it adds so much to like them winning.
Yeah, it's unforgettable once you hear it. Like it'll be in your head, and it's very satisfying too. The pushing of the button looks like something I'd like to do. It reminded me the color. I guess the color palette of it reminded me a little bit of Sorry, but it is definitely Trivial Pursuit because you just ask trivia questions and get closer to the center. So the first one he plays with is Brain in the treehouse. The question that Brain asks him is essentially like what makes up mud, like H2O and soil. And Arthur guesses phosphorus, which is kind of crazy. But when I was a kid, this is the first place where I found out what phosphorus is. Because I looked at it.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was really funny that like this first question's like, it's just funny because like Brain's supposed to be the smart one, but like Arthur like totally overthought this question.
Yeah, and so Brain is the first one to win, and of course, when everybody wins, they do the ding in the center, and then they raise their fingers in the air, a la Daniel Bryan, and say, "I win." So Arthur,
and it's great because it's the way they animate it is it's the same Dutch angle from the commercial, so it's like off kilter. And they all raise their hands the exact same way where they go, "I win," imitating the commercial. Just like when you would play Sorry against kids, they wanted to be as annoying as possible, and they would imitate the sorry, sorry, sorry from the ad.
Yeah, or for me, it was you always had to say, "You sunk my battleship."
Oh my goodness.
I always wanted talking battleship. I wanted that like crazy.
I had talking battleship.
Oh, you had talking battleship?
I had talking battleship, but I found it too complicated because I didn't understand the military alphabet. Because it would always be like Echo, Lima, like it was like the shield or something. It was like, so we just kind of played it, and I think it would like run out of batteries, so we would just play normal battleship on the talking battleship board. But I did have talking battleship back in the day.
You lucky. That was one of the toys that escaped my childhood. I never got it. So Arthur gets wrecked by the Brain, and it's a montage of Arthur just getting wrecked at no guessing, and everybody doing the I win thing. And it's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to images of Arthur reacting to things. He pulls some.
This episode in general has a lot of like, we'll get to it later, but the amount of like sketchy eyes in this episode is almost outweighs like all the sketchy eyes we've seen in the entire show thus far. Like in this episode, everybody looks sketchy as heck.
And like it's one of the most meme-worthy episodes I've ever seen. I'm gonna put up the Arthur reactions that I got later on this week. So check out our social media for that. So Arthur is not only loses at no guessing, like he throws it under his bed essentially, and like kicks it under there. So how the tables have turned, but he's also not very lucky in anything else. Like he goes bowling with Francine, and he loses, and he says to Francine, "Please don't say I win." And Francine goes, "Okay, you lose." Which
I really laughed at. Yeah,
that was awesome. So Arthur's really bummed out that he's been losing. He's telling his family at the dinner table. My fiance loved this one. Jenna loved this. He says, "I even lost my glasses, even though they're like on his forehead." And DW says, "I'll help you find them for $5. And
DW's out here hustling.
Yeah. Never missing an opportunity. In fact, she sees an opportunity to win right here because she comes up to Arthur's room while he's moping and says, "How about a little game of cards before your luck changes? I mean, to help your luck change." And
she's great. It's so funny because she's like legitimately like trying to sell that she's not trying. It's so funny because like bad luck isn't really real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this idea that because Arthur's on a losing streak, this is the best time to strike to beat him at cards is just a funny concept, but it totally makes sense with DW logic.
So they essentially, I believe they play Go Fish, and DW is trouncing Arthur, and he's only got one card left, and DW asks for it, and he says, "I can't lose to DW. She'd tell everyone." And as we've seen before in the show, she would indeed tell everyone about the one time she beat Arthur at cards.
It's just so funny because she's like trying to have beat Arthur at cards this whole time, and DW's like, "I can't lose to DW. Like the embarrassment would kill me." There's a recent episode of Rick and Morty where it's like a clip show episode where they look through all the memories that Rick deleted from Morty's mind. And there's one memory that's really funny that Morty didn't know that Rick deleted, where it's the one time Morty beat Rick at checkers, and he was like so embarrassed by that like he erased it from his head.
Yes, Arthur is as petty as Rick himself because he manages to keep the game going, which Arthur must have gotten an awesome run of cards after that, because DW had him dead to rights in the sense of go fish, and he manages to pull off a winning hand. And then Arthur realizes that he says, the other important thing here is that he distracts DW by like saying, look, a swarm of lightning bugs, and then looking at her hand. So Arthur says to Pal, now if my luck won't change on its own, I'll make it change. And it's just like, it's a great example of Arthur lying to himself. He's very good at that, because this is straight up cheating from the get-go. Like there's nothing not cheating about this.
This is one of the only times we see Arthur as an antagonist of an episode. I mean, maybe he's more of an anti-hero because this is just like his downward spiral. It's the first time we've seen Arthur really go on a dark path, but I love it. I love scamming Arthur. Like this whole montage of Arthur with his shady eyes, like his squinty, sketchy eyes, like trying to hustle people and finesse people, is just hilarious to me. Maybe I know as a kid it's supposed to teach you a lesson, but to me, I was just like, I love watching Arthur out here scamming.
Yeah, it's very unusual to have the main character of the show essentially as the antagonist. It's basically the closest Arthur ever gets to Breaking Bad. Arthur himself playing the role of Walter White, and you're like, well, I like Arthur, but I don't really like what he's doing. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. And Arthur is pulling off all these great confident faces because he's essentially distracting everybody and then looking at the cards they're going to draw, and that's how he knows the answers. And we get a montage of, after him losing, we get a montage of him just like effortlessly answering questions. He even answers one more quickly than he should before Sue Ellen can even ask him. Later on, everybody he played with is convening at the Sugar Bowl and wondering like how Arthur has gotten so lucky. And very interesting here, Arthur is held above reproach by his friends. Brain even says, but Arthur would never cheat. So it seems completely impossible to them that Arthur could be capable of such treachery, I guess. Yeah.
All the more to make it the perfect crime when he finally does start like cheating people.
He's even like practicing new techniques, like with a rope through his sweater, when he's back at his house. And the winning is starting to go to his head, because at the dinner table he has a great line where he's like, you know what the most exciting thing about winning? It's when you win. I love that feeling. And it's just like it's a confidence for a normally anxious character like Arthur. It's so strange to hear him so confident and like beaming, essentially. He's so happy.
He loves the hustle. What can I say?
I mean, it really does get into his veins a little bit, because it extends to all the other games he plays with his friends, because they no longer want to play no guessing because he just wins all the time. So Arthur has no grasp of strategic losing to make it interesting for everybody else to play. So they decide to play other games. But Arthur finds ways to cheat at that too. So they're playing cards in the treehouse, and Arthur just so happened to put up a series of mirrors over everybody. This is everybody else's fault. Like, how do they not see what's going on? I was just going to say
the same thing. They should be like, wait a minute. Like, this is on them for not noticing the, obvious con. But I will say, I love Arthur's, alibi here. When someone asks, why do you have all these mirrors set up in the treehouse? Arthur's like, very matter-of-factly, he goes, oh, they make the room look bigger.
Yeah, it's like a very interior design, like, mirrors make the room seem bigger, Sue Ellen. He does the classic, and I put classic in many, many air quotes, distraction technique when he and the Brain are playing mini golf. He just goes, "Hachoo!" like pretends to sneeze and to mess up Brain's shot. And then he gets like the troll answer that drives you nuts. Brain's like, you did that on purpose. And Arthur says, oh, come on, it's part of the game. If you can't handle a little competition, don't play. And this is where everybody's starting to get mad at him. They're like, they know that he's up to something, and they've got to find a way to bring him down a peg, to make him lose a game, so that he
I just realized that cheating Arthur basically exclusively talks in Trump tweets.
Oh man.
It's when you win. It's when you win. I love that feeling. The feeling when you win. If you don't want to play, you can't enter the competition. Part of the game.
your Trump imitation sounds a lot like Mero imitating Trump.
It's my Trump imitation's literally just the Mero Trump imitation. That's where I got it from.
Oh,
I love what he does it though. It's hilarious.
Oh, today in the news, Trumpito.
Oh, Trumpito. Your wild buns. My man's wild buns.
Come on, it's part of the game. If you can't handle a little competition, don't play. I watched
exactly.
I watched.
You know what though? When you think about like those words written out, it fits perfect.
Absolutely, like a little too well, which is why I kind of groaned at it at first. Had to get some Desus and Mero in there to help the medicine go down. So they say that Arthur's beaten every kid at the school, so there's nobody that can possibly challenge him. And like in the recently announced Red Dead Redemption 2, or like in a classic Hollywood Western, Binky Barnes slams open the double doors of the Sugar Bowl. He gets a real like tough guy entrance, which I thought was really funny. And they just say, hey, he hasn't beaten Binky yet, so let's get him to do our dirty work for us.
Yeah, they say people don't usually want to play with Binky because Binky is known for cheating.
That's right. So how do you cheat a cheater? Well, you cheat him with a cheater. And so Binky challenges Arthur to a game of no guessing, and they're doing it in the cafeteria in front of everybody because everybody wants to see Arthur lose at this point, and everybody being like Francine, Sue Ellen, Brain, and a couple of the no names, including Frank the Rabbit, who makes another appearance here. Arthur, because he's being watched by everybody, can't really cheat, so he's on level playing ground with Binky, because Binky says, like Francine comes up to Binky, and who is losing at this point, and she's like, why don't you cheat? And Binky's like, I don't know how to cheat at this game. You gotta know stuff. And to be fair, that's a very good point. So Arthur gets a question wrong, and then everybody really goes like, yeah, all right. And
Binky goes, which is like, at this point I'm like, oh, Binky plays board games just like my friend Josh plays board games. If you ever play board games with my friend Josh, it's very similar. Whereas, like, if you play Monopoly with him, he always insists on being the banker. One, because he'll just pocket bills from every transaction. And two, he always tries to make side deals. Like, here's a little 5, just remember who gave it to you, for no reason. It's a very exhausting and draining experience.
Your friend Josh, from what you've told me of him, sounds like a real antagonist when it comes to, fun games.
Quote unquote fun games.
Yeah, maybe not so fun anymore. So everybody's very excited that Arthur lost that point, and then Fern kind of comes up to him and says, everybody wants to see you lose because you've been acting like a jerk. And this is okay, so this is where we go a little bit off the rails.
This episode has I always pride Arthur at really, really naturally telling a lesson. Like, I love how the kids usually find the lesson of their own accord. Like, they come to the moral as one of their own conclusions. But this episode really, really overtly beats you over the head with the moral of the episode. And I think it plays on something you mentioned earlier. It's so odd to see Arthur just be straight up be so in the wrong that I feel like the writers felt kind of hamstrung by the situation they had put Arthur in, and so they had to really make him do a 180 to find the error of his ways and be like, listen kids, don't cheat, because the episode makes cheating seem so advantageous and fun earlier on. They really have to turn the car around to get their point across, and I think this acts as a detriment, because the next, basically, it felt like 10 minutes, but it's probably more like 5. The next 5 minutes of the episode is just kind of hitting you over the head with, hey, cheating's wrong and you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's a real butt pull at the last couple of minutes of the episode, because literally we go, like, Arthur looks at the camera, and then all of a sudden we get like a literal like cartoon thought bubble of him, and Buster comes into the thought bubble and he says, you need to talk to me. But Arthur has like an internal conversation with Buster, who is representing Arthur's conscience. Like, this is crazy.
I actually thought this was kind of a cool like storytelling device. Like I love the role of Buster as the friend that's from far away. It's one of my favorite things they've done with his character, just because it's like cool to see him as the voice of reason. It's an interesting role for him, and I like him as Arthur's Obi-Wan. But the things that they're actually saying is really boring. It's like, oh, cheating's wrong and you shouldn't do it, and there's not much more explanation besides that very, very black and white logic. And so like, as much as I like the framing device, this whole thing kind of, I got checked out at this point.
Yeah, like if you cheat, then you'll lose all your friends. I'm like, yeah, okay, I've heard that one before. And then so Arthur's conscience essentially tells him to cheat in order to lose, so to throw the game, and that way his friends will like him again. And cheating to lose sounds deceptively hard. Like, it seems like one of those things that just like, okay, I'll just cheat, but the other way. But I don't know. I feel like that would be difficult to pull off naturally. So I don't know. That just kind of got me thinking about that. But essentially what Arthur does...
I was like trying to think of times I've cheated to lose, and I was at a house party recently where I was playing Soul Calibur against a girl who I don't think has played Soul Calibur before, and I went very easy on them. And they actually beat me, but it was because I was going very, very, very easy on them and playing as Lizard Man.
Yeah, it's like it's like holding back when you play against a younger member of your family, like, you know, letting my little cousin win at Mario Kart. So I'm just like, oh no, I fell off the map again. Yeah. So essentially, Arthur's throwing the game. He's giving Binky all the easy questions, and Binky does beat him. But then they go to shake hands.
We get this great montage of Binky answering the easy questions, and like he starts off very like he puts a question mark at the end of all of his answers. Like Arthur's like, I don't remember the exact wording of the question, but he's like, this canine has 4 legs, and Binky's like, you mean like a dog? Like, he's so unsure that that's the correct answer.
Yeah,
I just thought but he gets more and more confident as he keeps getting these easy questions, and he's very excited to be getting them right. I just like that.
Yeah, this is like, what was it? A basketball is full of air? And
again, another basketball question. Like, once again, this Arthur episode's speaking my language. They're picking up what I'm putting down.
The bread around the hot dog is the bun, and Binky does win.
We start to just see the answers at some point. I don't know if this is an answer Arthur says earlier in the episode or that just Binky says at the end. But at some point, one of the answers is just the Boston Red Sox, which is like, I guess the Boston Red Sox exist in the Arthur universe.
Yeah, no, that was one of Arthur's questions that he got right. So they go to shake hands after the game, and all the cards fall out of Arthur's wrist, and he gets a little embarrassed. And then we get kind of the weak hitting home of the message of just like, I hope you realize, Arthur, that cheating isn't worth it. And you're like, yeah, okay, we did. And we even get like a really surprisingly clumsy wrap-up line. It's just like, let's go to the Sugar Bowl to celebrate my losing. And then Francine goes, no, let's celebrate everything being normal again. And it's just kind of like dusting your hands off and just like, okay, solve that one. And the episode actually ends with Arthur writing a letter to Buster about the whole situation. And
this actually kind of this brings it. I was like feeling really sour about that ending, and then this little bit brings it back around.
Yeah,
this is fun.
Yeah, this is like Arthur saying, "I want to thank you for all your useful advice. I couldn't have done it without you." And Buster's reading it in his dad's plane, and he just looks at the camera and goes, "Huh?" So
like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, that's kind of cute. Okay, so let's dial it back and talk about what we thought. Francine Redecorates. How was that one for you?
So Francine Redecorates, it's not like a laugh-a-minute episode, and it's not super engaging, but I liked it. It tackles a subject. It's one of those episodes where it tackles a subject that you don't really see in most kids shows about, you know, the trials and tribulations of sharing a living space with someone and coming to terms with that. It's a very grown-up lesson, and I also like how it's a Francine episode specifically about Francine and her sister. It's one of the most female-focused Arthur episodes like we've seen thus far. Like, there's barely a presence from a male character in the entire episode. Like, we get a little bit of Arthur at the yard sale, and a little bit of Francine's dad. But besides that, it's all female characters, so I applaud it for that. It brings a different dynamic with the sisters, and we get a little bit more of Francine's sister, which is always fun. But I'm not going to say it was the most engaging episode ever, and it's definitely not one of the more funny ones, but I did like it as a change of pace.
So I have kind of the same thing to say about both of the episodes, but I will also go into specifics in a couple areas as well. So the general thing I want to say is that I felt like both of these stories kind of fell apart at the ending, or maybe fell apart's a little bit of a strong, but I felt like the endings were comparatively weak compared to the things that I liked about the episode, which were in the first two parts. Like in Francine Redecorates, I thought that it kind of wrapped up a little bit too snugly in too little time. Like it wasn't like I didn't really believe it. It just seemed a little bit too convenient. And as we just discussed with Arthur the Loser, I thought that the moral of the episode was really hammered home a little too hard in the ending versus the rest of the episode, which kind of, like you said, glamorized cheating a little bit. So it seemed a little disingenuous. But in terms of Francine Redecorates, we really talked for a while about like the representation of Catherine as a character, and she's kind of low key a little bit of a favorite of mine. I like seeing her, and I like the dynamic that she has with Francine. I think they have a very good chemistry, and they're very believable as sisters. And I kind of like the visual elements of this episode too, like all of the tchotchkes that Francine has around her. It wasn't knock your socks off or anything, but I liked a few of the elements that made up the whole. So it's definitely fun to watch at least once.
It's a very low-key episode. Like, I don't know. It was a good episode for this time and place. Like, it's got a fall cleanup, just kind of chill kind of vibe to it, which is unique. Yeah,
it's like it's not it's not high stakes by any stretch of the imagination, but that's okay. They you need a little breather every now and then. The things I liked about Arthur the Loser, it had a humor to it.
I'm so conflicted about Arthur the Loser. I really am.
Me too, because like the first 2/3 of it are actually really great. Like there's an awesome energy to it. There's a great flow. Some very good jokes in there. Some great animation because of all the expressions that Arthur goes through. I also thought that Arthur's voice actor did a very good job of portraying Arthur at like his lowest and at his highest. Like I said, it's unusual to hear Arthur kind of this full of himself, but it was also a lot of fun because it's so unusual. And I did like kind of remembering how popular board games used to be, and that was fun as well. But like we talked about, I was kind of let down a bit by the ending, and I felt that the whole message of it was really hammered home in an obvious way that I didn't think I thought could have been a little bit more subtle or done a little bit differently. But it's definitely hard to condemn this episode as a whole because there's so many fun parts to it.
Yeah, I almost totally agree with you. Like, I was enamored with the first 2/3 of this episode. I love the basketball opening. I love like the board game ad. I love all the kids beating Arthur at the board game and doing the pose from the commercial. I love Arthur as a scamming cheater who will lie, like Eddie Guerrero style lies and cheats and steals his way to the top. I thought it was hilarious watching like Arthur finesse all of his friends and them like buying it hook, line, and sinker. Like you said, there's a lot of fun animation touches from the kids all doing the same pose after winning to Arthur's sketchy eyes and then Arthur's friend's sketchy eyes when they kind of realize something weird's going on with Arthur. And then it kind of falls off a cliff, like when Arthur is supposed to realize the error of his ways, and I think it's because they overcorrect. Like, they make cheating seem so fun in this episode that they really have to hit you over the head and be like, don't do that, though, because you'll lose all your friends. And they don't really, like... I know they really don't have to, because it's like, okay, cheating's bad, it's a kid's show, but they don't really, like... they don't make an argument for why cheating's bad. It's just kind of something they say, hey, it's wrong, and they don't explain why it's wrong. It's just like, hey, don't do that. So it really falls off a cliff for me in the end, and it does get pulled back by that little fun magical realism moment where it's like Arthur's like, oh, you gave me the advice, and Buster's like, what? That was in your head. Yeah, it's worth watching the first 2/3 just for how like like you said, it's very quick paced and zany and odd. But the ending, I was like rolling my eyes, which is not something I often do at Arthur, but I really was with how after school special-y it was. Like, it was almost Saved by the Bell-esque with how, like, cheating is bad. We won't cheat anymore.
Yeah, the moments when Arthur really succeeds as a kid's show is when it doesn't.
It's when it's subtle.
Yeah, it's when it's subtle and when it doesn't feel like a kid's show. Like, we've had some episodes of Arthur that are really, like, they speak to us now as adults, and they really don't talk down to their audience. And I felt like this was kind of riding the line a little bit towards the negative end. But I'm sure that that won't be the norm going forward. So, in conclusion, Arthur is a study of contrast, or at least these two stories are.
That's funny.
All right, so before we move on here, of course, we'll get to the plugs very quickly. On social media, it's been a little bit quiet this week because we've had an off week, but it'll be back with more images and whatnot and everything.
Much like a guy visiting Bella Hadid with not fresh sneakers, it's quiet for us.
But let me tell you, if you guys send us an email, Homeboy's gonna get it.
So read it on the air.
Right. So, of course, you can find us on our social media. Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. Twitter at... Oh my gosh, I forgot.
ECL Podcast, I believe.
Yes, you're right, Lucas. At ECL Podcast. Bad. That's why I shouldn't take weeks off. Elwood's.
I read it in the intro every time.
That's right. ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com. And of course, if you homeboys want to send in emails, it's ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com.
Dope. Very dope.
Okay, and if you want to find us and, of course, continue to listen or listen to any of our back episodes, you can find us on Apple Music. If you got the new iOS 11, it's in the podcast section. You know, things have changed around a little bit there, but I'm slowly getting used to it. Apple Music, give us a rating and review over there, please and thank you. We are on ElwoodCityLimits.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN. We are also on the Google Play Store. I did get a message from a listener on Twitter asking if we could be on Spotify. So I looked up a little bit of the process of how to get on Spotify, and I did submit us for consideration.
Ooh.
I did submit us for consideration. But we're going to have to wait and see on that one.
That's fun. I'm a Spotify subscriber myself, so.
I've not joined it yet because I still have my iPod that's crammed with music, so I'm very much old school like that. I haven't, or maybe just old man like that. I haven't done the Spotify service or anything like that yet. And so if there's any other services that you want Elwood City Limits to be a part of to make your listening experience even more pleasurable, then please let us know. Coming up next week, we've got another set of episodes. In fact, it's going to get a little angry. It's going to get a little mean. It's going to get a little bad. It's going to be rude and full of attitude. Next week, our episodes are going to be Arthur versus the very mean crossing guard and DW's very bad mood.
Oh, wow. Strap in.
So we'll try and keep it as posy as we can, but no promises. It's going to be all kinds of negative Sith-like emotions if you've seen the new Star Wars trailer.
I have seen the new Star Wars trailer. Listen, I'll try and combat all that negativity with the high I'm going to be riding after all of the opening games for the NBA season. Which I'm very much looking forward to.
That's right. We'll be into it by then. Okay, so for myself, Will Young, thanks a lot for sticking with us through the absence. We'll be hopefully back with you next week. Lucas, what's up?
I want that game.
I want that game too. All right, we'll catch you next time for Elwood City Limits.
Mr. Bucket.
That's right, I'm Mr. Bucket. I'm Mr. Bucket. Toss your balls in my top, I'm Mr. Bucket. Out of my mouth and we'll pop, I'm Mr. Bucket. We're all gonna run, I'm Mr. Bucket.
The game's Mr. Bucket. The first to get their balls into Mr. Bucket wins, but look out, because the balls will pop out of his mouth.
I'm Mr. Bucket. The balls pop out of my mouth, I'm Mr. Bucket. A ball is what I'm about, I'm Mr. Bucket. We're all gonna run, I'm Mr. Bucket. Buckets of fun.
Mr. Bucket from Milton Bradley.
Buckets of fun.